Hi folks, welcome to the 5 at 5. Today we're going to be talking about floodplains and does it flood in the desert? What you need to look for as a new home buyer to the desert area if you've never lived here before. Hi, my name is Heather McClaren. I am a licensed realtor with Long Realty in Southern Arizona, located in Tucson. And I'm going to talk to you today about the importance of investigating floodplains when you're purchasing a home anywhere in the desert in Arizona. Since Arizona is my area of specialty, I'm just going to focus on that, but I'm sure this applies to many deserts and many areas in parts of the world. We're going to talk today about floodplains and basically the 101 of floodplains in Southern Arizona. And then we're going to have another section next week where we talk about floodplains 201. We're going to get into what the different flood zones mean. There's different flood zone ratings and what exactly they mean and how important is it. There are some flood zones that aren't that critical. They're not that important to the consumer as per most people's opinions. They're glad to know it, but it may not affect their decision to purchase. And other flood zones are really important and might require you to pay high cost flood insurance, and there's a risk of your home flooding if it's not built up in some fashion. How to suss out if it's built up and what exactly are some of this zoning is going to be our floodplain 201 section next in a couple weeks. We'll have that. And then we're going to have a 301 where we actually have an insurance expert come on and talk to us about some of the floodplains zoning, how that affects getting mortgage, how that affects your home insurance, and kind of what to look out for in terms of insurance on your property. But today we're just going to go over a quick 101 overview of floodplains and what exactly are they and why is there flooding in the desert when there's hardly any water. That doesn't make sense. So stay tuned. Now, any type of land can watershed. And what exactly does that mean? Well, we're talking about stormwater. Where does stormwater go? If you're not familiar with this part of the country, our earth has some of what's called caliche in it. Now, caliche, let me get the actual definition because I want to give this to you straight instead of my explanation of this. Caliche. Now, it's a mineral deposit of gravel, sand, and nitrates found especially in the dry areas of North America, an area of calcium carbonate formed in the soil of semi-arid regions. For those of us that live here in the area, basically it's a combination of rocks, minerals, and earth that when they get dry enough, it almost makes the ground like rocks. Like if you've ever tried to tap something into the earth in this part of the country, you'll see the ground is like hard as a rock. It's really hard to get into. So when it rains, what happens is the water doesn't immediately absorb. If it hasn't rained in months, the earth is like a rock. And what happens when water hits rock? Well, it runs off, right? It doesn't absorb right away. So Arizona has an amazing stormwater system that is set up and designed by urban engineers and folks in all kinds of specialties way above my pay grade that I don't know about of, ecosystem design. And basically they created this whole stormwater system that's kind of amazing. It empties into the Salt River, the Agua Fria River, and the Gila River through an amazing system of storm drains, culverts, pipes, drainage basins, and washes. So it's like this whole maze across town. Now, if you're in the Tucson area, let's say, for example, or the Phoenix area, if you're outside of town, you'll see more areas where everything kind of, dips right into the washes and the earth is actually angled to go right into the wash. So when it rains, everything goes into the big washes and they all go wash after wash after wash till they get to one of these, Gila Salt River or the Agua Fria River. Well, in some of the older parts of town, especially where I'm focused in Tucson area, there was town growing before any of that was set up or designed. And some of the city was built before that was designed, and some of it was built where there wasn't any washes, or it's too built up to be close to a wash. So some of our streets are actually designed where the street runs like this, and the water pools down into the middle and runs right along here, and it channels this street to that street to a wash finally, and then to the river. So there's all kinds of streets in the city area that are used almost as floodplains, watershed basin areas, as a maze to get to the washes and to get to the river. And this is all over the city. So if you happen to purchase a home and you back up not just to a wash, which seems like an obvious one, you'd think, hey, is the water going to rise up if we get a lot of rain into our backyard? But what if you're just on a street and there's no washes for miles around? You might think there's no risk of any water coming on our property. Well, that may not be so. That street may be part of the, amazing stormwater system that has been designed by the city, and your street may be a throughway for water to pass after the rain. Now, what does that look like if you're not from the Tucson area? I mean, typically as a layperson, not as a professional because I don't specialize in stormwater, but just as someone who lives here, I mean, we'll see heavy rains and then maybe an hour or two of flooding, and then that's it. It pretty much absorbs. You don't see anything else. Typically the first 45 minutes to an hour after a strong rain is the worst. But that depends where you live. That could just be on the surface streets and then it absorbs. But if you live back up to one of the washes, it could be, a day later your wash is filling from a rain that was 25 miles away in a higher elevation. You didn't even know it rained. And all of a sudden your wash is filling up from, drainage from another area. So it's a really important thing to suss out when you're purchasing a home with your realtor, to find out if your home in a desert is in one of the FEMA designated floodplain areas. I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see what I'm looking at. So right here you see kind of like, this is a cute kid's book, but it's designed to show you how a desert system is set up, and how the water gets channeled to the eventual river where it's going to go, because it can't absorb right away into the earth because the earth is so hard. So there's places you can look. Now this is a FEMA site, and then there's other sites on here. There is, let's see, the site with Pima County sites where you can look, and you can locate different flood hazard maps for the city and for out of the city by typing in an address. And your realtor will know how to do this, but I just want to make sure this doesn't get glossed over in your home buying process, that it doesn't just get sent to you in some email or document that you missed. And then 5 years into your home ownership, there's a giant rain like we've never had before. And, 3 inches of your house is underwater, or the front yard's underwater or something. I don't want you to be dismayed. Usually it's not that severe. Most of the time it's like the first 6 months of home ownership, and all of a sudden with the first rain, the backyard's underwater for a couple hours and people are like, what? So it's just important to make sure you're aware of this as a homeowner in Arizona, and that you buy accordingly. We're going to talk next week about the different flood zones and what that means. Some of them don't matter much to you. It's every 500 years you could get a couple of inches at the corner of your property. Big deal, right? You just build up some earth, right? Other flood zones are really important, and your house could actually be built on one of them, and it could flood there regularly because it's right off one of the channels for the stormwater. So it's real important just to know this information before you purchase. There's different places like we were talking about on FEMA. Pima County has different flood zone map areas. that you can check out. They even offer this really neat grid, and I'll have some links to this below. They offer this really neat grid where you can check out some of the streets and how passable they are during rainstorms, and what happens when it rains, because those streets may be part of the stormwater system or adjacent to it. It may be challenging to get through that area. So most of the time, most people aren't severely impacted by travel just within a few hours after a big rainstorm. But it's really important to know about where these floodplains are. And if you're living in a flood zone, right here, like this is, if you can see the blue line, right, that's a creek, a wash, but this whole area is the flood zone, right? And then these areas can spill over, and they have a certain percentage of chance of getting, you know, so much flooding every so many years, because from historical data, every once in a while, this is how big of a rainstorm we have in this area or something. So it's just important to suss this out and be aware of this before you become a homeowner of a property in the desert. So tune back in. Our next, probably in a couple weeks, we'll have a Floodplain 201, buying a home in the desert. Is flooding an issue? And we're going to talk about the different zones and what they mean, so you know what to look out for on your documentation when you're purchasing and what's important. There's more to it than just, you know, will this cost me flood insurance or not? Of course, that's the big question, but you know, there's more information you're going to want to know about that. So tune back in. We're going to have future shows on watershed as well, where we talk about how you can impact your own lots and your own parcel that you own to utilize the the water in the desert that we get in the most fruitful way. So thanks so much for tuning into the 5 at 5, and we'll see you again in the future for more great topics.